specifically on providing support to survivors of domestic violence and child abuse. Wuraola is the Executive Director of Women's Safe House Sustenance Initiative, where she provides shelter, healthcare, and legal aid services to female victims and survivors of all forms of violence across Nigeria. She is a deputy
Can you please unmute yourself, please?
Unmute, so Adebobi.
Unmute.
I've been reading. Okay, all right, so I will read the profile of our guest speaker now. I didn't know I was muted. Mrs. Wuraola Ayodele George is a lawyer and a women's rights activist. She is skilled in the nonprofit community development sector, civic engagement, and law practice. As a lawyer, she strongly identifies as a feminist with a focus on gender equality, equality of the sexes, women's rights, as well as the protection and rehabilitation of women, women's rights of women and girls facing gender-based violence. She focuses specifically on providing support to survivors of domestic violence and child abuse. Wuraola is the Executive Director of Women's Safe House Sustenance Initiative, where she provides shelter, healthcare, and legal aid services to female victims and survivors of all forms of violence across Nigeria. She is a deputy chairperson to the Association Against Child Sexual and Gender-Based Violence, Oyo State, a coalition of 70 organizations working on gender-based violence in Nigeria. Formerly, Wuraola was the Social Secretary of International Federation of Women Lawyers, FIDA, Oyo State, where she offered pro bono legal services to women and girls facing violence in Oyo State, Nigeria. She has carried out research in violence-related trauma, and forms of violence against women. She constantly focuses on the intersectionality of women facing violence and provides support for all women and girls facing violence, specifically focusing on women with all sexual orientations, women living with disabilities, and women living in marginalized areas. Wuraola is a Mandela Washington Fellow, Shear Blair Foundation Fellow, and a Margaret Ekpo Feminist Fellow, driven by her passion for eliminating gender-based violence and providing support for women and girls facing all forms of violence in Nigeria. It is a great honor and privilege to welcome Mrs. Wuraola George into our midst. You're welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind words, and good afternoon, everyone. Quick correction, my name is Wura Oluwa, not Wuraola. So I think that's
oh, really?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. Okay.
So thank you for sharing that. Would jump right into the session, if that's okay with everyone. Yes.
That's
to start with. I'm going to be sharing some life experience.
Can we have a minute, please? Okay. It seems like nobody can hear me. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, ma.
I hope everyone can hear me.
Yes, loud and clear. Right,
all right, great. So we're going to be jumping into the session right away. And I'm going to be sharing some experiences, stories, and also tips, ways to identify domestic violence, or look at the things, how to go around those issues, how to solve those issues. And I'm hoping that this will be as interactive as possible. But before we go on, I would ask please that my slides are put up But before we go on, I would like us to look for the reaction button, and that should be at the bottom part of our screen. And we'll see that we have some icons there. You can either raise your hand if you have a question. You can also clap. You can do it. Thumbs up, you can laugh, but the icon here that shows hearts, and I want us to all put up this heart, and we are putting up this heart because we are going to be standing right now to take more or less like a 30 seconds to 1 minute silence for all our dear sisters who have lost their lives from domestic violence.
All
Those who
right.
have struggled. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. I'm sorry. Before you start, I was supposed to have called the national president to give our opening remark.
Okay.
After I've finished reading your profile. So please, can we just give a national president 1 minute to say our opening remark, and then you can continue. I'm sorry about that.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Wura Oluwa Ayodele George, I apologize for this break in transmission. It was due to some technical issues, our usual network and delayed relay of messages. Yes, because I had sent the messages, but it just didn't go ahead. I want to thank everybody who has taken time out this evening to join this meeting. This meeting is a time for, I would say, sober reflection, because what birthed this meeting in the first instance was the death of one of us not too long ago. As a result, well, supposed as we were told, as a result of domestic violence. Was the baby. So we just thought, the National ESCO now thought about it, that instead of just bearing these things and keeping quiet and suffering in silence, that it is nothing to be ashamed about or ashamed of. And if we come together as one, as sisters, we can share our bodies, we can share our pains. So that was why we thought, okay, let's look for somebody who is really knowledgeable in this area, who can talk to us, so that we know that there is help somewhere. We know that you can reach out to people. You don't have to feel ashamed that, oh, my marriage is failing. No, there's no perfect person. There's no perfect marriage anywhere. And, there's no perfect relationship. That's the truth of the matter. So if it might be people we know. It might be people in our neighborhood. It might be people around our offices. And then when we learn of these things, we can share with them and tell them, look, you don't have to suffer alone. You don't have to bear these things alone. You can speak out and you definitely will get help. So we want to thank Mrs. Wura Oluwa Ayodele George for joining us this evening. And I can assure you, because at least I know Wura, assure you, it is not an evening wasted. Please sit down, enjoy the lecture, and take a lot out of it. Don't just say, okay, I'm joining because STCOGA has put up the Zoom link and I need to join. No. Let's join so that we can benefit, we can help other women like us. We know people, a lot of us know people out there who are going through issues. So what we learned today, we can share with them and set them right and put them on the right path to say, look, this is what you should do. No, this is where you should go. I know this is Ibadan. I know where you can go in Ibadan. I know who you can talk to. And I know even if you talk to this person, if you are not in Ibadan, we can link you up with other organizations in other states. So please, let's enjoy this evening together. God bless us all. And I pray that we will not experience this kind of needless death in our midst any longer, in the mighty name of Jesus. Thank you very much. Thank you, Wura Oluwa.
All right, thank you, my president. Mrs. Wura Oluwa George. You can go on now. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you so much for the for that too. Okay, so I was saying, while my slides are being put up, I would love us to look at the bottom part of our screen. If you're either using your phone or a laptop, I'm sure you probably would find the reaction button. If you go to that reaction button, you can click on an icon that shows hearts. It's in the shape of a heart, and of course it's red. I would love us to click on that, and we are doing this in solidarity because we are taking a few seconds to honor the memory of all of our sisters who have lost their lives from domestic violence. And we'll just do that for just a few seconds, and then of course we'll move to the overhead. May the souls of our dearest sisters who have lost their lives to domestic violence rest in perfect peace.
Amen.
Okay,
Amen.
so we're moving on. We're moving on right now, and of course we're looking at identifying signs of domestic violence. I would like us to move on over to the next slide, please. Okay, I think we can skip this because this is just really my biography. So we can skip, yes, we can stop here. Thank you. Okay, so when we talk about domestic violence, many people think domestic violence is just physical. A lot of us do not understand that domestic violence is just beyond just, that physical contact, the slapping, the beating, and all of that. Many women go through domestic violence without knowing that they're even going through domestic violence. They feel it's just a part of life. It's just one of those things you must experience. If you are either in a relationship, or you are married, or you are living with somebody who is probably not even an intimate partner, you feel, oh, it's just one of those things that I'm supposed to go through. Many times women speak up only when the abuse or the violence has become physical. And that's why if you can see the screen now, I'm going to be talking about what domestic violence truly is. Now, domestic violence is not just violence in between intimate partners. It can also happen
We've lost you, or is it just me? Hello?
It's not just you. We can't hear her anymore. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah.
We can't.
Good evening, ma.
We can't hear you anymore.
Let me try and reach out.
Can you call? Yes, please reach out.
Yeah, let me reach out.
Yeah, I think, okay,
Yes, I want to
she's
call her.
in now. Let me just admit her.
Okay.
Okay, right.
Okay.
Okay, she's in.
Okay.
She's still not talking.
You need to unmute yourself. Unmute yourself.
You are back in, so unmute yourself.
Unmute yourself, please.
Okay, thank you, Mura.
Thank you.
Hello, can everyone hear me, please?
Yes,
Apologies,
yeah.
I think I was
Yes,
knocked out
we
for a few seconds.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, great. So if I can still, I can't actually see the slides anymore. If I can still have that, so that I can just
I'm
go
sharing it again now, please.
I think that will be fine. All right, thank you so much. So permit me to please put off my video. I think that might help with my my network where I am. Thank you. So I was saying that domestic violence is not just physical, and it's not just between intimate partners. And so that's why the first thing you probably will see here is domestic abuse and intimate partner abuse. Domestic abuse can happen between siblings. It can happen between parents and a child. It can happen between friends, as long as it's in a domestic environment. Intimate partner abuse, however, can happen between people who are intimate partners. And I must quickly add that you don't have to be married to have intimate partner abuse or to go through intimate partner abuse. Can be in a relationship. It can even be in a relationship that is not defined. There are many relationships that are not defined. You know, you probably like this person, but you don't know if it's somebody you want to get married to. You're probably thinking about family, society, maybe children, if you're getting remarried, and all of those issues that might actually arise. Any violence that happens in that kind of relationship is also domestic violence. Now let's quickly look at the forms. And I'm going through these forms, like I said earlier, because a lot of people still do not understand what domestic violence is. If you could quickly still go back to the first slide, I'll just run through the different forms. So the first form I'll be looking at there is sexual abuse. And of course, what is sexual abuse? Sexual abuse, any sexual activity that is done to another person without consent. Now let's talk about it in the context of marriage. Many times, I've heard a lot of women say that, oh, he's my husband, so he's free to have sex with me at any time. A capital no. I always tell them, I say a capital no to that. Why? Sexual activity must still have consent from both partners. And when we talk about sexual abuse in the context of marriage, then we begin to talk about marital rape. Many women get raped every single day, sometimes on a weekly basis, because they are not interested in the sexual activity, but their partners are interested. Physical abuse, of course, this is the one that we are mostly familiar with. A lot of us are familiar with physical abuse, the slapping, the beating. And during the course of this session, we would understand that there are different phases of abuse. And physical abuse physical abuse stands the top of the ladder. It is the one that is most severe of all the forms of abuse. Psychological violence also happens. And what happens when there's psychological violence? Psychological violence is usually one of the most difficult forms of violence to prove. Why? Because you don't have any physical bruises. For physical abuse, you probably have a mark on your face, you have an injury somewhere, a scar. For psychological abuse, there is no scar. And how does psychological abuse work? I mean, we'll go through a number of examples now. So we see how psychological abuse happens. Verbal insults, part of psychological abuse. Name calling, defamation. Recently, a woman shared with me that her husband told the people, her neighbors, that she had HIV. And everybody started to avoid her in the neighborhood. Of course, we must all imagine how terrible that must have been, because nobody was ready to have a conversation with her about it until one day A woman summoned up courage and, approached her and said, your husband told us that you have HIV. And I said, no, I don't have HIV. But really, how many people will she tell that she doesn't truly have HIV, even if she has a negative report from the hospital? Economic abuse is also another thing. And economic abuse can come in a number of ways. A lot of women are working, but their partners are the ones who are earning the salary, who are collecting all the money. Some are also working, but they do not have control over the money that they are earning. Or they have control over their earnings, but because, oh, you're working now, so take charge of all the expenses in the house. Buy the food, pay the fees, pay everything. Just take care of it since you are working. That is economic abuse. And of course, we have other harmful traditional practices, which we'll look at as we go along. Practices that are not even just cultural, but are done specifically or deliberately to women in a domestic setting just to keep them down. For instance, I'll give an example. I had a young woman whose husband, would always take her to a pastor and tell the pastor to pray for her, that he feels she's a weak. And so the pastor will always pray for her, wash her head with soap, so many dirty and fetish things that were just completely unnecessary, all because he just wanted to put her down. If we could go to the next slide, please. We'll talk more about examples of these forms of violence that I have described. Now, what are the signs? Because many times women go through domestic violence and they don't even know what the signs are. There are sometimes I have conversations like this with groups of women, and while they're talking, women begin to think, oh, so this thing happening to me is actually an act of violence, and I didn't even know. So I'm going to go through a number of things that show that, this is domestic violence. One of those things is unnecessary control over activity. Unnecessary control. It's okay, to ask, okay, what are we doing now? What's the plan? What are your activities going to look like? Because you're a family, so carry along the other person. But when there's unnecessary control, we have probably heard of stories where women say, oh, I dressed up, I'm beautiful. When I was about to step out, then my husband said that is the time he wants to have sex with. And because as a woman, I have to do whatever my husband says, so I took off my clothes. That is domestic violence. The handwriting of domestic violence is so clear in that. Unnecessary control over every activity. Sometimes this control might look like love, but it is not love. We see sometimes spouses insisting that they are the ones that will go, that will buy things in the house. They are the ones that will interface with the children, school, teachers. They are the ones that will interface with people in the neighborhood. They are the ones that will control the business or the work that their wives are doing. All of these things. Speak very loud what kind of attitude or character the person has. And it turns out to be that it's just a matter of unnecessary control over activity. Also, ignores privacy or personal space. When you're married, you're still entitled to your own personal space. You're still entitled to having your phone, your emails, your social media or social networks, without necessarily having somebody infiltrating that at all times. I've dealt with several women who have gone through domestic violence, and so I have a lot of stories to share. There are women who have gone through violence whose husbands not only check their phone, check their emails, and even respond to emails on their behalf without their knowledge. So you can imagine if somebody has sent you an email for a job or something, and then you check your phone or you check your computer and see that a response has gone out without you knowing that that's whatever you receive. Some people have their phones linked to their spouse's phones, wherein those spouses receive the emails and respond to those emails even before you, the owner of the email account, has sent it. Or liking or sending messages on social media to people without your consent. There was a young woman's case I dealt with about 2 years ago, and her husband was sending nude pictures to men on Facebook, and she didn't even know because she was not really a Facebook fan. And later she find out that he was sending those pictures. The men would send back to him now because he was the one managing the Facebook account. And he was trying to see how he could get money, for those pictures.
Wow.
Of course, we talk about marital rape, where someone forces you to have sex with them when you don't want to. Sex has to be consensual. Any sexual activity without consent, or any sexual activity with consent, but the person giving you consent does not have the capacity to give you consent at that time, is married. It's a form of rape. Or the person is giving you consent, but is giving you consent because you are forcing that person. Forcing that person to give you consent, that is still rape. There are a lot of women who have sex with their husbands, who are raped by their husbands because their husband have to their. If you're not ready now, I'm going to stab you. I'm going to take your soul. That is not consent. Clear. That can never be consent. That can never be consensual sex. Rape. Also, I've put in here that controlling of birth control, insisting that you get pregnant at a particular time. As a woman, we own our bodies. It doesn't matter what anybody else does. And when it comes to having children, we should decide if we have children or not. We want to make the changes, everything, because your entire life changes. Putting birth control pills for you to eat, or forcing you to take the pill, or forcing you to say you must get pregnant in the next 1 month or 2 months or 3 months, all of that, domestic violence. I recently, I'm still on that case anyway, with a woman who discovered that her husband was having an affair with her cousin very recently. I know we were tracking the conversation he was having with his cousin, basically their entire relationship. And during this time, the husband started to feel that his wife had found him out. I said, oh, you must get pregnant for another child in the next 3 months. The 31st of March supposed to be the last day supposed to have gotten pregnant, in this year. Just to cover up his tracks, of course. That's the form of domestic violence. Also, deciding what you should wear or eat, or how you should spend your money. You say, I want to eat rice. Say, no. You can't eat rice because I don't think rice is what you should be eating now. You should eat beans. Or if you go to a restaurant and it's the person that is making the order for you every single time, never ask you what your opinion is or what you feel like eating. Or always dictating what you should wear. Or always dictating how you should spend your money. Telling you what you should buy and what you shouldn't buy. Like I said, some of these things, they're just a thin line. I mean, if somebody is saying, okay, don't eat this because right now I think it's going to be, it's unhealthy for you or it might affect your health. I mean, you would also be aware that that thing is not good for you. So that is clear. Or don't wear this particular thing to this particular event because it might not be appropriate. It can come as a word of advice, but by the time the person begins to make you feel like you are terrible for not taking that advice, or you are awful for not listening to him, or becomes manipulative, that is a clear form of violence. Can we have the next slide, please? Other signs, and this sign I'm going to talk about is one of the most common signs, but also it's also a sign that a lot of women do not recognize, and that is isolation. Isolation, I've said here, prevents or discourages a person from going to work or school or seeing any family or friends. Isolation is one of the first signs of domestic violence, because the abuser goes on to cut you off from everybody or everything that is familiar to you. Cut you off from your friends, cut you off from your family members, cut you off from your co-workers, cut you off from your schoolmates, cut you off from everything and everybody that you know. And may I also quickly add that it doesn't usually come the way we think it comes. It is usually a systematic thing. So the person probably looks around and say, okay, this person looks like a friend that is closest to this person. So let me begin to attack this friendship. So, you know, in your innocent mind, you're probably just sharing, Modupe said so and so day. I said, well, really, why would she say something like that? Are you sure this friend really likes you? Because I don't know what kind of friend would say something like that to another friend. I know gradually the person begins to sow seeds of hate, seeds of disgust in your mind, and trust me, those seeds will begin to grow. Some people go out all the way and say, I don't want to see this person in my house anymore. And it doesn't matter who the person is. If the person is a friend, the person is a family member. And you know, before you know what is happening, that person, the abuser, becomes the only person you can confide in. Sometimes they wrap it all around is your best friend. Yes, your best friend, but then you have a best friend because you have other friends, because you have other people you can have a conversation with. Eventually, when anything is happening to you, you will have ruined your relationship with every other person, so much so that you are not able to confide in anyone or talk to anybody or say, oh, this is what is happening to me, because you've ruined the relationship already. There was a young woman who was married and was taken to Sokoto by her husband, and during the short time they were married, he cut her off from everybody and everything that she knew. He took her phone. In fact, she couldn't talk to even her schoolmates or friends. Anyone who was calling her, he would say, oh, that person is teaching you how to be a bad wife, or is linking you up with men who will sleep with you. You know, even the neighbors, she couldn't have any conversation with the neighbors. She was not going to any church. She was not going to she had no community of people that she could relate with. She had no family, both biological family or social family. She had nothing. And so when he started beating her, of course, like I said, beating, physical abuse sits beautifully at the top of the ladder of domestic violence. When it got to that point, it became very, very difficult for her to be able to talk to anyone because she had no one to talk to. Eventually, of course, she had to talk about it to her mother at just one occasion when he wasn't looking, when he wasn't with her, you know, to have that conversation with her. And even talking to her mother was pretty tough because he had even almost ruined the relationship even between her and her mother. Isolation is one of the key signs of domestic violence. Humiliating a person on purpose in front of others. We see people saying, name calling or using abusive words on women and their wives in the presence of other people. It's okay to correct somebody, but that correction should not be in the presence of other people. where the person begins to feel humiliated and begins to feel helpless and useless. Also, locking one spouse in a room or outside. Last week, a young woman called me from Benin, Edo State, and said her husband had locked her in the house for 3 days, and he hadn't been back to open the door. He locked her in with her child for 3 days. Well, thankfully, she called at the time she did, and were able to get some police officers to go to the house, you know, help break her out and then arrest her husband. But, you know, we hear a lot of these things, but we feel maybe it's just a way of, you know, cautioning the woman. Women are not to be cautioned. A woman is not a child. It is a child that you teach and you caution. You don't caution an adult and tell her, okay, I'm going to lock you up or I'm going to lock you out for coming late. I remember last year we had a program, a women's program, and I was at the program till very late in the night. And I think about 6 p.m. or so, one of the women approached me and said, oh, I need to get home right now. I need to get home. And then she looked at me and said, aren't you going home soon? I said, no, I'm going to be here until the program is over. And she said, aren't you married? I said, I'm married. I'm not married to Hitler. I will get home by 8 p.m., then I will have to sleep outside. A lot of women go through that. They have a curfew. They have a time they have to be home. And unfortunately, many women don't see anything wrong with that. Cursing one spouse, using curses, abusive, not just abusive words, curses. Cursing the person's work, the person's family. There was a woman who reached out to me. I think this was about 2 years ago now, and said her husband used to curse her every day. She was going to go out. Her husband would curse her in the morning. Curses like, as you're going out, you're not going to fulfill anything that you want to do. Anything that you use your hand to do will not prosper. You know, really terrible curses. And you know, because as women, we are very emotional beings. We are very much in contact, in touch with our emotions. This thing started to affect her. Of course, maybe not because of the curses, but you know, just the thought of the fact that, oh, it's my husband that is cursing me. She would actually go out and be disoriented all day, destabilized all day, and of course start making mistakes and truly not actually prosper. At the time she had reached me, she had attempted suicide and thankfully had survived. And I told her at the time that you need to leave that environment. If not, you would attempt suicide again. And this time around, I don't know if you are going to survive it. Forced prostitution. So many times when we talk about prostitution, we may think the picture we have in our minds, a woman who is standing on the road half naked. No. If someone is an abuser, a spouse is forcing you to have a conversation with somebody else just to get something from that person or get money from that person, it is also regarded as prostitution, because you're using your feminine side to appeal to the other person for some form of benefit. And in most instances, that benefit is not even coming to you. It's probably coming to the husband or coming to whoever the abuser is at that time. Can we move on to the next slide, please? So we've said a number of things. And at this point, I want us to just take a few seconds to reflect. Of all the signs of violence that we have described, what signs of domestic violence can you identify? It might not be you, of course, but it might be somebody you have had a contact with. It can be a friend, it can be a family member, it can be a neighbor, it can be anyone. Also, how have you dealt with these forms of violence in the past? Of course, again, it might not be personal to you, but if someone had come to you and had told you, oh, my husband has refused to allow me work, or as is always demanding for sex from me at hours when I am not really interested in it. How have you dealt with these forms of violence in terms of engaging those people, in terms of giving them advice, in terms of sometimes just glossing over it and say, oh, it's not a big deal. It's just one of those things that happens to women. And the third one is, are you living with the trauma of past experiences? Trauma is very real. I'm trying to see the best way to put this. When we have an injury, a physical injury, we are always very careful to make sure that we care for that injury. We make sure that we treat it, we make sure that it heals, we make sure that in many instances that it doesn't even leave a scar. But emotionally, when we are wounded, we just gloss over it. Something terrible happens, like this, and then we just say, oh, it's just a part of life, and then we just push it to the back of our minds, sweep it under the carpet, and then move on. So it's like an injury that is not treated, and then it stays there. And of course, what happens to an injury that is not treated? It becomes worse. It becomes an ulcer. Eventually, it becomes a cancer. So while we reflect on this, let's move on to the next slide, please. Other signs of domestic abuse or domestic violence. And this one might sound familiar to us. Unfairly accusing you of being unfaithful. This is one sign that I'm sure many women have experienced. If you don't know, if an abuser, if a man doesn't know what else to call a woman anymore, then you say, she's sleeping with other men. Because that's the only thing that comes to mind. I have a woman currently, right now, whose husband for years kept accusing her, you're sleeping with other men. You're sleeping with other men every day, every time. In fact, that was his excuse for physically abusing her. That was his excuse for attempting to kill her at different times. Thankfully, she was able to leave that environment sometime last year. And he has even had the guts now to go and file a case in court against her. And guess what? In the court, in divorce petition, what did he put? She sleeps with other men. Clearly, that is, in fact, that is like one of the first things that he put there. And she has explained to him so many times, I don't sleep with other men. He keeps insisting she sleeps with other men. At the point he came and said all the 3 children are not his children, because he's very sure that since she's sleeping with other men, those children must belong to those men. And so now as a lawyer, I'm wondering why he's asking for custody of those children that are not his children, since he's claiming that they belong to other men. I have another woman whose husband would take her pants to church and tell the pastor, see, this pants is smelling of sperm of another man. I'm sharing some of these things so that we understand how terrible some of these things can be.
Wow.
Imagine the humiliation this woman has to go through.
Wow.
Explaining to people in church that no, I asked her, when she told me, so I asked her, I didn't know that sperm has a particular smell. And okay, let's assume it has a smell. How do you smell your own sperm as different from another man's sperm? I don't understand it. I don't understand it. Well, you see, this is, like I said, one of the it's one of the easiest things to accuse a woman of. And of course, it is a form of violence. I talked about sexual violence, psychological violence, so that we are able to group it as we go along. This is a form of psychological violence. Of course, it's not beating her physically, but it's embarrassing her, disgracing her everywhere, making her have to now explain herself to people. Destruction of property, destroying your things. Some people say, oh, I'm angry. When you're angry, then you break something. Guess what? Many times, the things that they break are not the things that belong to them. They look for things that belong to the other person to break. So you're angry, you won't break your own phone, you will break your wife's phone because you're angry. You won't break your own favorite cup, you will break your wife's cup. You won't break anything that you bought with your money, you will break the things that the other person bought with her money. This is a form of violence. And I've heard people say, oh, don't worry, I'm going to go for anger management classes. No. If someone is an abuser, many times, a lot of these things are premeditated. You think about it first and then you go ahead and do it. Some of these men claim that they have some psychological problems, they have some mental health challenges. And like I was telling one of my sisters yesterday, one of the women I am working with currently, I was telling her, look, if your husband has mental health challenges, if he has refused to go and seek for help, you cannot continue to live in the house with him because in her situation, that is the case. You have to leave. You will leave when he has gone to treat himself and he is now fine. Then you people can continue to do your husband and wife, whatever it is you're doing. But you're staying with somebody who gets angry at the slightest opportunity and not just getting angry, goes ahead to begin to destroy things in the house or destroy your things. I'm sure we have heard of situations where you hear that, oh, the spouse went and then burnt the certificate of the woman, burnt everything that has to do with her. That is a form of violence. How many times have we heard that the man was angry, then he burnt his own certificate? I'm sure almost zero number of times. So, of course, that is another sign of domestic violence. Now, threats to hurt you or to hurt your children or to hurt your loved ones. Many times, the abuser knows that, oh, women are emotional beings. So when you say, oh, I'm going to harm this particular person, or sometimes it might not even be your children. It might be something that you love so much. It might be, oh, I'm threatening to kill your dog. Maybe you have a dog, a puppy that you love so much, or a cat, or whatever it is. It can be a pet in the house. I'm going to kill it if you don't do this. So you then begin to do that thing that the person wants you to do. Hurt you physically, and like I've said, again, physical abuse sits beautifully at the top of the ladder of domestic violence. And physical abuse can be hitting, beating, punching, pushing, kicking, including a weapon. A woman told me that her husband told her one day that he needed to buy pepper spray just to protect himself from armed robbers. And so he bought pepper spray. In fact, he bought two. He gave her one and he had one. And one day they were having, it wasn't even really an argument, really. I think it was just a matter of, I want to eat rice. No, it is yam I cooked. And he brought out that pepper spray and he sprayed her eyes, he sprayed her nose, he sprayed her mouth, he sprayed her whole face. She almost died. So that, of course, that is not slapping. That is not beating. That is not kicking. But of course, that is a form of physical abuse. Blaming you for his own outbursts. We will get to what I call the cycle of abuse, and I'm sure it's probably either the next slide or two slides after this, that shows what happens when this person blames you. Many times, oh, it's because you don't listen. That's why I'm reacting this way I'm reacting. It's because you are not submissive enough. It's because you are not doing the things that other women are doing in their own homes. If I say sit down here and you sit down here, I'm sure this conversation we are having will probably not happen. I will not have beat you or beaten you, or I will not have had to harm you or hurt you if you had listened to me all through. Blaming you for their own outbursts or for their own actions is also another form of domestic violence. Can we move on, please, to the next slide? Yes, so this is the cycle of abuse. I call it the cycle of domestic violence. And I have two images here on the screen. And I will start with the image on the left. So it's a circular image, and it shows 3 phases of domestic violence. The first phase is what I call the honeymoon phase. And of course, I'm sure we all know what honeymoon is. It's the time when you are still really swimming in the clouds, having fun, and you think everything is just going to be going perfectly. But many, many, many women experience abuse in this phase, and they don't even know it's abuse. So one thing that that stands out for honeymoon phase is the fact that many women don't know that they're going through abuse during this phase. And what happens during the honeymoon phase? Some of those forms of abuse we've talked about might happen, but the abuser comes and says, oh, I'm sorry, I did not intend for this to happen. I was just angry, or, I was just tired. I had a stressful week. Maybe that's why I reacted that way. Beyond the apologies, the person sometimes, promises to change. I promise you, it will never happen again. There was a woman whose husband was beating her like that. And every time he would tell her, I promise you, it will never happen again. And by the next day, it will definitely happen. So finally, one day he said, oh, I promise you, it won't happen again. And she said, okay, go and swear. Swear to the God in your village that it won't happen again, and I will believe you. This is what happens during the honeymoon phase. Buying of gifts. Many times women have received handbags, shoes, dresses, vacations, different things, jewelry, all tainted with blood, really. Because every time you accept a new gift, you tell the abuser that it is okay to abuse me. But of course, like I said, this is still what happens during the honeymoon phase. Giving compliments too during that phase. Oh, thank you for coping with me. I don't know any woman who would have ever been able to cope with me like this ever. You are the best thing that's happened to me. You are the best wife any man can ever ask for. I don't know which woman would ever want to have abuse as a daily way of life. And so accepting those compliments, you begin to feel, oh yes, I'm so special. Hello, my dear sisters, my aunties, you're not special. It doesn't make anything special. It just simply states that you are accepting that abuse at that time. Also, during the honeymoon phase, you have what I call the period of calm. So an act of violence may happen in the month of March, and you may not experience anything again until November. You're still in the honeymoon phase. By November or December, another thing again would happen because the issue has not been addressed. All of this shows that that person is still in the honeymoon phase. And from the honeymoon phase, where do we go to? We go to the tension building phase. The tension building phase. This is the time where there are no more apologies, just insults, threats, accusations. Accusations such as, oh, you're sleeping with this man. Oh, who is that man? Oh, who is Wale on your phone? Why does Wale keep calling you? Fault finding. Everything that you do is not good. Controlling behaviors and quick mood changes. This one is really terrible because you can be having a conversation with the person right now, and the next moment, the person's mood has changed. Becomes violent the very next moment. All of this show that you're already in the tension phase. The tempers are getting high. Tension is building. And if it is not addressed at that point, it goes right to the explosion phase. If we can see the screen, I have an image that looks like a bomb, like about to explode. this tension, this explosion phase is the time when there is physical abuse, where there's throwing of things, door slamming, physical abuse, verbal insults, where there's destruction of property, sexual abuse. All of these things happen during the explosion phase. Many times, economic violence, which we explained before, can run from the honeymoon phase down to, as we said, can run all through all three phases. Now, if you look at the image on the right, it's just really the same thing, but at the center of it, I have put denial. Many times, all of these things are happening many times, but we are in denial. We feel like, no, this can never ever be my portion in Jesus' name. And of course, nobody is saying it's going to be your portion. But the earlier you come to terms with what is happening, face it squarely, and look for a solution, I think the better. So when there are attacks, when there are threats, when there is blaming you for the action that they have committed, then we begin to say, oh, I just need to do more prayers. And I am not against prayers. And I also believe that prayers change things. But also actions work. When you're praying and you have an action, I think an action would also work too. If you can move on to the next slide, please. Now I've talked about that cycle of violence so that we understand, because many times we say, oh, why didn't the woman leave? She did not leave because she was still in the honeymoon or tension building phase. She was still receiving gifts. He was still coming and apologizing and doing things that in court we will say was taking her breath away. Or she was still in a phase where she experienced what I call trauma bonding. And what is trauma bonding? Where she just feels, oh, I think I have invested too much in this relationship. And I don't think I'm ready to just leave the relationship and move on. That also happens. I feel that my happiness is in this person. Or I'm sure we have heard people say, so where am I going to start from? These are the issues that usually happen. And this is where we've gone through that cycle of abuse. Now on this slide, I've said there are 3 things to never forget when facing domestic violence. One is communicate with others. Communication. If we have someone on the call right now that has been isolated, please begin to reopen lines of communication with people, with relationships that you have destroyed, bridges that you have burnt. Communicate with other people. I constantly say that violence grows in our silence. Violence grows in our silence. Communicate. I know sometimes it's difficult because you're looking for somebody you can trust, somebody you can confide in, someone who will not go around, having a conversation about your stories. I'm pretty sure there is somebody you can have that conversation with. Please communicate with other people. Also, decide on what you want. So many times I've come in contact with women who they have told you this terrible story, and I tell you, so what do you want to do? I just want him to stop beating me. I don't have the power to do that. I don't have the power to make him stop beating you. Especially if you don't want me to arrest him, you don't want to seek justice for yourself, you don't want to leave the marriage because you want to continue to bear the name Mrs. Somebody. You don't want any, you just want me to, what do you want me to do? You want me to pray for him, to pray with you? And if that's what you want, I say, fine, I will pray with you. I don't know how much of that will change anything, but I will keep praying with you. Decide on what you want. Be decisive. Many women have died because they did not decide, did not make a decision on time. They kept procrastinating until it was too late. After making that decision, take a step to change your life. Take a step to change your life. Nobody can take that step if you don't take that step yourself. I'm usually very, very careful when it comes to telling someone to take a step, because that person doesn't take that step by herself. She can come later, and that has happened to me several times. Come later and say, oh, I didn't want to do that. Or is this woman that said I should do it? I was just on my own, minding my business. She's the one that said I should come move out of my house. I should take him up. And you begin to be the person to take the blame for trying to save that person's life. So take a step to change your life. 3 things: communicate with other people, decide on what you want, and take a step to change your life. Please, let's move on to the next slide. Hello, can you hear me? Please, can we move on to the next slide? Okay, so we have some other signs of domestic violence. I know we have talked about threats. That is when the person threatens you that I'm going to harm your children, or I'm going to harm your family, your loved ones. Now, this threat is a different kind of threat. This new threat we want to talk about, it's when the person threatens to hurt himself because he is upset with you. Person say, if you don't do this thing I want you to do, I'm just going to kill myself. And the person doesn't even just say that. The person probably goes ahead to maybe cut himself or do something terrible. I say, if anything happens to me, my blood will be upon your head. Your blood can never ever be upon anybody's head, because if you decide to harm yourself, it's up to you. It's your business. I am giving this signs. I'm sharing these signs because this is how people get manipulated. And so you begin to dance to the tune of the other person, not because you want to do those things the person is asking you to do, but because you're afraid that he will hurt himself if you don't do those things. Also, threatens to report you to the authorities for imagined crimes. There was a woman who was being abused by her husband. And every time, of course, in fact, he had gotten to the point of beating her physically, and all of that. And one day, just one day, she picked up a knife to, try to defend herself. He was coming towards her. I don't think it was even a knife. I think it was a fork or so. He was coming towards her, and she knew he was going to hit her again. So she just took a fork and said, if you come to me, I'm going to stab you with this fork. And immediately he picked up his phone and started recording. I was speaking on the recording. So you see, this is what I've been going through. She's picking up a knife. She's threatening to stab me with the knife. I don't know what I've done to her. And I can tell you that for a long time, he continued to beat her because he would threaten her every time that if you talk to anybody about this thing, I would send that video online. I will post it on Instagram. I will post it online. I will send it to the whole world. I will report it to the police and show them that video that you were threatening to kill me. So that is also a form of violence. She could no longer talk about what was happening to her. She could not seek help. She couldn't do anything. Well, until she was able to find her voice and speak out on what had been happening to her. Also, insisting on ritual religious practices for cleansing. Every time they are killing chicken and pouring the blood on your head because they want to cleanse you from witchcraft, cleanse you from evil, cleanse you from bad blood. I've heard a lot of things. People say, oh, she brought bad feet into the home. So that's why for so many years now, we've not been prospering because her feet, she brought bad luck into the family. And so every time you're the one, they are washing your head, they are doing all sorts of dirty sacrifices on you. That's a form of domestic violence because you're subjecting yourself to activities that you're not supposed to go through. There are women who have been forced to either swear to a god or, take an oath. There are women who have been accused of sleeping with other people and say, oh, if truly you are not sleeping with any other man, then go and swear to so and so God. And then you decide to go and swear when you know you are not sleeping with anybody. That is a form of domestic violence. And trust me, even if you swear to that God, the situation is not going to change. Instead, you would have lost yourself, you would have lost your confidence, you would have lost everything that you call yours, simply because you're trying to prove a point. Sometimes it's not worth it. Also, when the person says things like, if I can't have you, then no one will have you. That's also a sign of violence. If when it gets to that point, if we haven't talked about it before, that is the time to talk about it, because that means the person can kill you. The person can kill you at that point. But if I don't have you, then nobody else is going to have you. That means the person can actually kill at that point. And of course, that is a sign of domestic violence. Can we move on to the next slide, please? So I'm also talking here now about what to do when facing domestic violence. We have talked about the signs, so many signs. Now we are going to look at what can you do if you're facing domestic violence? If it's personal to you, or if you have somebody who is facing violence and the person doesn't know what to do, what are the things you can tell the person to do? Sometimes just telling the person, leave the house, might not be the best thing to tell the person at that time. Because the truth is that many women are afraid. And why are we afraid? Sometimes we are not financially independent to be able to make some of those decisions. I was speaking to a woman about 2 days ago, and she said, I want to leave, but I don't have money to rent an apartment. The house we live in belongs to my father-in-law. And so we have never even paid rent ever before. So if I'm going to leave the house I am in, it means I have to get some money to rent an apartment, more or less start a new life. And that can be scary. It's even more scary when it's not just you. You have children to also care for. So, but what do you do when you find yourself, or if you find yourself in this kind of situation, or if you find somebody confiding in you who is facing this kind of situation? One, document, have evidence of the abuse. Many times there's been physical abuse, but no evidence, or verbal abuse, no evidence. The person that has been cursing you, saying all sorts of things, record it, and you can do a recording anywhere. It can be recording on your phone, it can be pictures, it can be whatever it is. When you have this documented evidence of the abuse, please don't save it on your phone. I can't count how many women have called me and said, oh, my husband has broken my phone because he's thought I had recordings of what times he was insulting me on my phone. Don't save it on your phone. The world is moving and we must move with the world. You have a Gmail account. Please go to your Gmail account. You have a Google Drive attached to your Gmail account. Please save some of these things on in your Google Drive so that you are able to retrieve them anytime. If they destroy your phone, anywhere you are able to log into your Gmail account, you are able to pull out these things that you have documented. Also, I said, inform family members. Many times, family members are not informed until the matter becomes completely critical. And how do you inform family members? That is if you have not isolated yourself from them, if you have cut them off and say, don't come to my house anymore. From now, it is me and my husband. If something is happening to you, how do you now go back to them and tell them, oh, this is happening to me? Do not isolate yourself. In fact, maybe this should have been the first thing I should have said. Do not isolate yourself. Don't cut off your friends, your family, everybody you can confide in or you can have a conversation with. Do not cut them off. Consciously maintain relationships around you because it would help. Also, I've said get medical care and also report to the police. Get medical care, especially if you're having any physical violence, go to a hospital, make sure that you're treated. Tell the doctor that you are going to need a report or statement about the injuries or what you've told him, a report of what has happened. You may not necessarily need it at that time, but trust me, you will need it later. Go to the police station to make a report. Many women are afraid that, if I report him to the police, now they will arrest him, they will, maybe it will become a big issue, they will charge him to court. It's not in every instance that will happen. Sometimes just writing a statement and making a report there helps. There have been cases of women that killed their husbands. And in almost every case, you hear that, she said he was beating her, but who knows if that was actually true? Maybe it was a lie. Maybe she just said that because she had nothing else to say. Because there's no record, there's no report anywhere. If there's already a report stating that, I'm going through domestic violence, if anything happens, eventually, not that something will happen, of course, but if anything happens, people will know that truly she was already facing violence at home. Sometimes the abuser needs a higher authority to call them to order. You cannot beat him, of course, but the police can. They can set him straight. They can set his mind straight. Sometimes when children grow up in abusive homes, it does feel like it's okay to beat your wife when you get married. Just beat her, so you adjust her brain a bit. That is where the police comes in. The police can actually set, I've seen the police set a lot of men straight. There was a night that a woman called me and said, actually it was her neighbor that called me and said that her husband, that's her neighbor's husband now, had thrown his wife from upstairs to downstairs. How the woman did not die, I don't still know till today. And of course, the man was arrested and he was detained, he was beaten. He wasn't charged to court because the family stepped in. Everybody said, no, let's not charge him to court. But that was the end of his madness. Sometimes to cure madness, you need a higher madness to cure it. And so that is why we usually say, report to the police. It's not just because you want the police to, charge him to court. Now, I've said report to an organization that supports domestic violence victims or survivors. There are NGOs around that understand if nobody believes that something's happening to you, they will believe that that thing is happening to you. I think we're still on the former slide, please. So maybe we should still go back, just one slide back. If nobody believes you, at least those people would believe you that yes, truly, something's actually happening to this person. I remember a night that a young man called me from Lagos and he was crying on the phone and he told me that his elder sister was being beaten by her husband here in Ibadan. And when I had a conversation with the woman, he beat her, but she had no bruises on her body, no scars, nothing. And so it was really difficult for anyone else to believe her. But what I did believe her because I knew that I actually heard the man on the phone because I was on the phone with her that night. So I heard him screaming, raging and all that in the middle of the night. So report to an organization around you that supports survivors of violence. Please, can we still go back to the last slide? I think I still have one more thing to say on the last slide before this final place here. Okay, so I've said create a safety plan. I think we're still on the slide. We still need to go one slide back, please. So I said create a safety plan. And no, the next slide. Yes, this one, thank you. And what is a safety plan? Many times when there's domestic violence, you need to know what is my step one? What's my step two? Many times when I have conversations with women, I tell them, your next steps are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because when you're in that kind of situation, it can be confusing. Create a safety plan. If you know the person is physically abusive, put together your documents, your certificates, your credentials, make sure they're out of the house, have a backpack for emergencies, a few clothes, money, a small phone, ATM cards, to avoid being out of the house in the middle of the night and then you say, oh, I had nothing on, I'm just wearing my pants and my bra. I mean, to avoid issues like that. Begin to make plans. If you truly want to leave that environment, begin to make plans on where to go to. Do not wait until it has gotten to the explosion stage and then everything is now over before you make a plan as to where to go. Create safety code words. Some people are going through so much violence that they cannot have a conversation with anybody around them. What's a safety code word? It can be pineapple. It can be an apple. And when I call you and say apple, it means I'm in danger. You need to help me get out of this place now. Or if I tell you, oh, I want to go to the market, of course, I'm not going to any market, but that would interpret to you who I'm calling that I am in danger right now. Create those safety code words with somebody that you trust so that you can have a conversation with that person without necessarily having to explain what is happening to you at that time, and the person will be able to take an action. And lastly here, I've said, have money and a phone for emergencies. I always advise women who are going through violence, have another phone, have an extra phone. Have a phone that you keep somewhere with a different number that is unknown to other people that you can use to communicate, that a number that cannot be tracked. I dealt with a woman once whose husband had tracked her phone. So he was reading all her messages, tracking her phone calls, everything. And when she told me, I said, just go and buy a small, we have these our small phones that we call touchlight phones. Buy that one and buy a new SIM card. It's as simple as that. And then make your phone calls on that phone. Have that. And finally, I've said, leave the abuser. Leave the abuser. Your life is more important than what anyone else or anybody can say. I know a lot of women that have this thing, you know, because you have the motherly trait, you want to be a mother to your children. Your abuser is not your child, unless the person is actually your child. Your abuser is not your child. A husband is not your child. You're not the person's mother. So the idea of, so what will people say? Forget about what people will say. If you die, people will still say something about you or say, why didn't you take that move? You can never please anybody or everybody. So it's better to take charge of your life. Can we have the next and last slide, please? Can we have the last slide, please? No, that's the one before this one. I've said that there is no medal for enduring domestic violence. There is no special heaven for domestic violence victims. That maybe when you get to heaven, you'll have your own special mansion. Maybe your mansion will be like 50 mansions, while the people that didn't go through violence will have only one mansion. No, there's no special medal. There's no special gifts for enduring domestic violence. So take charge of your life. If you don't take charge of your life, no one else will help you take charge of your life. And so that will be my call to action. That will be the words, this will be the words I will leave with us all this evening. Take charge of your life. There is no medal for enduring domestic violence. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much. Can we give Mrs. Wuraoluwa a round of applause? Can we just, I want to, of course, the vote of thanks will still come later. Like you just said, there is no medal for staying in a domestic violence environment. A lot of women will be saying, I hope you will be alive to reap the fruit of that year that you are eating in the name of going through domestic violence. Okay, thank you again, Mrs. Wuraoluwa. We have a survivor in our midst, and I would like to call on Isi to just, in 5 minutes, just share how it was and how she was able to come out of the experience of the domestic violence that she had. Isi.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Well, in my own case, I didn't have, I was not touched. Nobody ever hit me. But every other thing that has been identified, I went through. I was abused psychologically, financially. In fact, this man was beginning to turn my son into a misogynist. He would tell my son that he was more important than me, the mother, and then the sister. So this thing, if I didn't know what it was, maybe I would have been confused, but I could see these things. I know these things. I'm a gender advocate myself, and I'm seeing these things happening to me, and I'm like, what is going on? How did I find myself in this place? So what did I do? I'm grateful to God that I have a very, very beautiful social network, and my family, they are just the best. So I reached out to as many people as I could reach out to. In fact, STCOGA is another place where I found help. Everybody rallied around me. Those of them who knew me, they rallied around me and they supported me. And right now, of course, I'm doing excellently well. The things I did not achieve in 10 years, I've achieved in less than 2 years. So domestic violence is real. It is shameful sometimes, but I'm grateful to God that when He created me, I wasn't created with a lot of shame. So I didn't consider shame as something that would hold me back. Of course, I was financially abused, so I had no money. You would see me driving different cars. You'll be wondering, this woman is living the life. But to drive those cars, I would save money to buy fuel. I was living in a mansion, and people will see me when I come out. So I don't have a lot of sun damage. So you see my skin glittering. You don't know that is a diagbon I have made from the coconut tree in my house I have rubbed. I couldn't buy a body cream for years. I couldn't change my undies for 5 years plus. It was really, really crazy. In fact, when I look at my account balance these days, of course, it's not like I have a lot of money. But when I look back, my account balance used to look like a radio station, 10.25 naira. But I was driving cars. I had at least 3 cars to my bottom. So I would drive anyone that had fuel that would take me to the next filling station. Because I have been able to save up some money to buy fuel, I'll put fuel in that car. When Oga comes back, is that one I've managed to put fuel in? You use the next day. It was really, really crazy. In fact, for many, many years, I couldn't go on Facebook. He will tell me that you don't need it. You don't need Facebook. Okay, don't worry. When I come in the evening, you will look through Facebook. These people, I don't know how they're able to, but there's something I've come to realize. You see, we mothers, I think that we have a lot of work to do. We are the enablers of these abusive men. It's the way we have trained them. A lot of men have not been trained. They have been allowed to believe that they are superior. The women must do what they need when they need it. Not what they want, how they want it. It is your duty as a woman to carry it out. It's because that's the way they were brought up. I'm grateful to God for the son that I have now. Because because I knew these things, I didn't leave it on time because I didn't want to come out without cash. But you see, as the years continue to roll by, it got worse. So I had to borrow myself brain. I said, well, if this thing has not ended in 10 years, in 15 years, it's not going to end. You will just continue to suffer. In fact, if I share pictures of before and after, you people would cringe. I'm a naturally fair complexion person, but in the peak of the abuse, I had lost color. My face was forever puffy. I looked pregnant, even when I was not. I looked sick.
Wow.
Because, of course, I was sick. I was mentally sick. So this thing is really, really crazy. And it's something that it's very, very dear to my heart. I'm grateful to God for this platform that is STCOGA. I know that many of us are survivors here. And of course, I'm available to talk to as many people as possible. They know me. When I have the opportunity, I talk because it's my own story. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Risi. So you didn't actually tell us how you came out of it.
Okay, I said that I have very beautiful social network and my family is excellent. I woke up one day and I said to myself, today is the end of it. I had removed my certificates from the house like a year before because I knew that this man was getting to that point. He had picked our marriage certificates. So I knew that something was going out of the place. So I had taken out my certificates. I told my children when they came back from school that I said, Friday, we are out of this house. And it looked like a joke. Of course, Friday, I had 25,000 naira in my account. I went to pay for a bus because I had developed all sorts of medical cases. Let me put it like that. Medical issues, I mean. I wasn't processing protein anymore. I was having, my blood pressure was over the roof. Everything was just going wrong. And that is something that a lot of domestic violence people, victims go through. Everything, your body just starts to break down. My uric acid was crazy. Everything was wrong. I just told those children, as soon as it was Friday, I had paid for a vehicle to convey our little things. I used an orthopedic mattress because of the same abuse. So I bought the mattress myself. I needed to remove it. So I carried the mattress, I carried our clothes and my children. And we drove straight to my mother's house. And that's where we are. We are 2 years plus here now. But because I also have my family,
Thank you, Risi.
Yes. And because STCOGA, the family I found in STCOGA, a few people rallied around me and we are doing great now.
Bless you. Thank you, Risi. God bless you. I will allow Mrs. Wura Oluwa to make general comments and then we'll ask questions. There's somebody else in the meeting that wants to share experience. I want to call on, what's her name now? Olufunke Adeyemi. Can you please unmute yourself and just share your experience with us in 2 minutes?
Good evening, ma'am. Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. My own started exactly a month after my wedding. He started beating me a month after my wedding, right in the presence of my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law said, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. That's the same thing she experienced, that she survived it, that I was going to survive it. I should be praying for it. That is going to change. This man did not change. A year, 2 years, 3 years, he did not change. And do you know, the amazing thing is, after beating me, he will beg me and started crying. He will even take me out to eat food so that I will forget. But just give me another 2 weeks. He will still beat me. He will come home drunk. He smokes. He is into drugs, which I did not know before I entered into the marriage. He is into drugs and he will come home drunk, smoke, and pound on me, beat me. It was not easy, but I kept quiet. I kept quiet for long, for 5 years. I kept quiet. I didn't even know that our neighbors were observing. They were eavesdropping into what was happening. I did not know. But the very last one, it was my neighbors that called my family. They called my family that if they actually wanted me alive, they should come and carry me. We were in Abuja. My family was in Ibadan. So this man, he will collect my phone, or after beating me, he will collect my phone, transferred all the money in my account. If he will lock me up, I will beg him that please let me go to work. I will call them at my work that I was sick. I couldn't come to work. I will beg him, he will lock me up until I beg him that I will not tell anybody. Until I assure him that I have forgiven him. I faced this for several years until I could not hold it. It was my neighbor. I've used my neighbor's phone to call one of my sisters before. So it was my neighbor that called my sister that if they actually wanted me alive, they should come and take their sister from this place. They were so surprised because they would always ask me, how is your husband? How is this one? Until the following day like this, very early in the morning, they came to Abuja with my brothers, everybody. Hey, he was still in boxers. In fact, they actually wanted to beat him up. If not that he cooperated, he just said, okay, the family has sent us to bring back our daughter. Since you are doing this, he denied though. I was surprised. Said he never laid his hand on me, and we were just playing. That everything he did was just play. I just opened my mouth like this, and there were bruises. They said, okay, how did this bruise came up? He could not talk. My brothers wanted to beat him up, but we packed all our things and we came to Ibadan, and that was how I found myself. Heal and acting, I'm enjoying my life. I'm enjoying my life, I work, I spend my money as I like. Nobody's dictating to me. Nobody's transferring my money, my salary. We transfer everything into his account just to render me powerless. So my advice to everybody, please open up. I would have been there. This is what we say, you will kill me and leave my dead body in the house. I will just change location. Thank you for this opportunity. I really appreciate it. In fact, it's just a picture of what happened to me. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. Do we have, if you have any question you want to ask our guest speaker, can you raise your hand that will recognize you, and then I will give us numbers, and then we can quickly take the questions, and then she can answer the questions that we have. Do we have anyone that needs, do we have any questions? Do we have any questions? Can you please raise your hands? Okay, Olubukola. Okay, Olubukola, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Good evening, our guest speaker, Mrs. Wura Oluwa. Thank you for this time that you came on board, at least to share to give us some experiences and about what some people are going through. Even some of us, we might be experiencing some of it, like as you have stated some things, and we are not aware about it. My question now is like, when you have somebody like maybe a spouse that maybe cares more about the children more than the wife, like even the money given to the children, because I have somebody like that, giving the children more money than the wife. Like, you know, you're supposed to care for your wife, but you're not caring for the wife, but to care more about the children. Is that not a domestic violence, like emotional, you know, things like that? And that one is always suppressing the wife down with thoughts that what is going on, and she cannot fight the children. So please shed more light on that. Thank you, ma.
All right, thank you. Do we have any other questions? So that we take all the questions and then our guest speaker will answer all the questions together. Goyen. All right, okay. Mrs. Uraoluwa, your daily judge, can you please respond, correspond to EC and Adeyemi's experiences and then answer the question? Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. Thank you for this. And thank you, dear sisters, for sharing. I know that was probably not easy to be able to share. And I understand how that might probably be. There's usually a lot of stigma, a lot of shame, associated with domestic violence. So thank you for sharing. Let me start with the first story. And of course, we've talked about economic violence already, and I'm sure I mentioned the fact that economic violence can take different shapes, different forms. I think for hers, economic violence was making sure that she did not have money to spend, but putting up a different image, for the public, to show that, oh, I'm caring for my wife and she has a car to drive. She looks comfortable. But ensuring that within the home there was really little or no money that she could actually lay her hands on. I am excited for you that you were able to leave that environment, because I must say it is not easy. It's not the easiest thing to do, especially in the face of what the public will think. And what do I mean by public? What community people would say. Community people, I don't just mean your neighbors. For instance, your church. That happens. There's a woman's case who I'm on currently, and she reported to the pastors in church because her husband is a pastor. And so she reported to the other pastors in the church. And those ones told her, oh, madam, you just have to be submissive. There is nothing prayer cannot do. Just keep, submitting. The Bible says submit, submit, and submit. Submission is not slavery. Submission is not slavery. And you see, because she's a person with disabilities, she has visual impairments. A lot of people feel that, why are you complaining? After all, I helped you now by marrying you. If you didn't marry you, who would have married a blind girl? So, I mean, that just, of course, compounded the situation for her. And I told her, I'm sure he saw that you were blind before he decided to marry you. So that is not an excuse to now become abusive to you. So you still have to take charge, of your life. The second story here, I think that one also just really explains everything that we have been saying all through, where you're prevented or isolated from the public, and then you have to keep giving excuses. You have bruises on your body, and then you can't even tell anyone. When you go to work, they will ask you, what happened to you? You say, I fell down. Really?
I fell down from Okada.
You fell down today. You fell down tomorrow. You hit your head on the wall. You fell from the stairs. Even someone with visual impairment will not fall that much, really. So it still comes back to taking charge of your life, because the thing I can identify from our two survivors who have shared today is that they took a decision at a point and said, today is the last day that this thing is going to happen to me. Today is the last day. If we don't reach that point, we'll just keep going round and round in circles. No matter what you say, people say, oh, give advice. I don't like advising people, because if you tell them, oh, do this, they'll say, I didn't want to do it, oh. It is that woman that said I should do it, oh, me, I was just on my own. Giving advice. Saying, oh, why don't you leave? oh, why don't you take a different step, would not result into anything if the person does not make up their mind to say, oh, I want to go. If you're not tired, then that means you're not tired. And I will say this and then go to answering the question. There's a woman who went through violence all through and kept staying there. I gave everybody's advice for her to leave. She kept staying there. To the point that the husband even came and even finally went to court to file for divorce. And even has not even divorced her, she's still in the house. Even after the divorce is now final, she's still in the house. Because he's now divorced, of course, he's no longer married to her now. He now keeps bringing different women, everything. She's still in the house, saying that, oh, I can't go. Oh, he's my husband. He's my soulmate from heaven. I think we need to talk about how domestic violence affects the self-esteem of women. So much so that you feel feelings of helplessness, of uselessness, of hopelessness, so much that you are unable to carry on with your life without that person. So until we come to that point of saying enough is enough, we'll just keep going round and round in circles. Now over to the question of where the husband chooses to care for the children over the wife. That is still domestic violence. If you look at some situations like that, you will see that in many instances, the husband tries to turn the children against their mother. There are situations where, I've handled cases where the husband would tell the child, your mother is a stupid woman. She's a useless woman. And the child will believe, yeah, because it's coming from daddy. So if daddy can say my mother is useless, then maybe she's actually useless. In fact, right from when the baby was 4 years old, even before he was 4 years old, when he just started learning how to talk, he would tell the boy, go and tell your mom that say, mommy, you are a stupid mommy. And the boy would actually go, of course, not knowing what stupid mommy means. He will go and tell the mommy, daddy said I should tell you that you are a stupid mommy. Turning the child against the mother. And you see, when you find yourself in this kind of situation, it's usually very difficult because when you talk to people outside, if you don't talk to the right person, if you talk to the wrong person, they will say, what else do you want? After all, it's caring for the children. And they begin to bring different standards of what they think care is. That woman number A, she's going through the same thing and her husband is not even providing for her. She's the one providing for the children. Be thankful for what you have. Don't be an ingrate. Thank God for what you have. So thanking God at that point now becomes your priority and not living that abusive relationship. So my direct answer to that, yes, that is still domestic violence. That is still domestic violence. And it's a dangerous form of violence because at the end of the day, you might find a way of turning the children against you to a point where you are unable to have them on your side or have them see what is happening. There's no physical abuse, of course, at this point. There's no physical abuse. It is all psychological abuse. And like I said at the beginning, it is one of the most difficult forms of abuse to address. So that will be my question for that. Okay, I see in the chart that can we also give a word of advice to yet to be married people?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Yes, we can give a word of advice to yet to be married people. We know the signs. Let me quickly add this for my sisters that feel that time is running out on them, and so they want to quickly get married. I have a lot of sisters like that are in their mid-30s, late 30s, early 40s, mid-40s. They feel, oh, if I don't get married now, then what is going to happen to me? I may never ever get married again. So they just jump onto the next available person without considering all of these signs. Sometimes we see these signs But we say, no, maybe it's just my mind. This is not your mind. It is not. If you see these signs, they are actually valid signs, and there are things that you should actually pay attention to. Somebody hasn't gotten married to you yet, is already isolating you. He's already saying bad things about your family, bad things about your friends. Gradually, you are getting isolated. He's already trying to control the people that you interact with or the places that you go to. You have an opportunity to travel to a particular place, and he says, oh, don't travel there. If you travel there, men will be looking at you. They will be asking you out. So where would you go to in this life as a woman that men will not ask you out? If you are brilliant and you are energetic, and you know what you're doing, it doesn't matter if you are married, it doesn't matter how old you are, men will still come around you. So if a man cannot deal with that, if he cannot trust that the wife he has married will remain faithful to him against all odds, then maybe he shouldn't be married. Maybe he's not ready for marriage. So the signs are always there, and the handwriting is always written boldly on the wall. But many times we get carried away with emotion, with love. Our love should not cover our eyes and then land us, into a place where we begin to face violence. So my advice to yet to be married people, please be conscious of the signs. We're talking about these things because a lot of times we don't talk about these things enough. So we don't know what the signs are. So please be conscious of the signs so that you don't fall victim, of an abusive person or relationship. And I see another question here that says that in a case where the abuser goes around slandering you, what can you do about it? That is the time for you to leave that abuser. As long as you are staying with that person. So I know it can happen in two ways. One, you probably have left the person, and then the person is still slandering you. And then sometimes you are still living with the person and the person is slandering you. If you are still staying with the person, I think that's a good time for you to leave that person. Because as long as you are there, many people will believe that, oh, truly, it's actually happening. Like the issue of the HIV thing I talked about earlier. The man the woman was still living together with the man in the house. And people will say that, hey, yeah, maybe that's why he's not having any, I'm sure he's not having any sexual anything with her anymore. Yes, because she has HIV. Many times as women, our duty most times is to cover our husbands, not to expose them. But it's when the situation is the other way, especially for abusive men, the situation is always different. Because as I'm speaking now, I know of another woman whose husband truly has HIV. From he was abusing her and sleeping around, and now has truly gotten HIV. But nobody knows about it. At least, well, beyond the few people that she has engaged, nobody knows about it. They are living together in the same house. Nobody is not looking over his shoulders that, oh, who is looking at me? So that's one way. Address it immediately. Two, please confront the person. Many times you see, we just say that God will judge him. God will judge him for saying that thing he's saying. Confront him. Let him know that you have heard what it is that he's saying. Three, don't go about defending yourself. You see, the purpose of slander is to put you on the defensive so that everybody say, your husband said that you are doing this, and then you start explaining yourself to everybody. How many people do you want to explain yourself to? Please stop defending yourself. You would ruin yourself emotionally. At the end of the day, you become depressed. In explaining to person A, B, C, D, E, how many people do you want to explain to? You will become depressed. At the end of the day, you will fall into depression. So stop explaining yourself. It's not worth it. And take a decision or a stand that makes everybody know that, yes, this man is saying things about me that I don't want, and so I'm done with it. And so sometimes when I tell people, look, if you are not fine with this entire situation, just go and file for a divorce. But we also have the God hates divorce, category of people, and that's fine. So go and file for a divorce and let it be clear in your divorce petition that he is going around spoiling my name. He will publicize that. People will see that, oh, truly, he's spoiling my name. Or he's slandering me, he's making people feel like as if I'm a bad and terrible person. But don't fold your arms and say, whatever he does is not my business. I'm living with him and I'm just going to be facing my life. Take an action that puts you in the clear that you do not accept that situation is doing. You can also reach out to people that you feel will be able to prevail on him to stop doing that. So I've said a number of things. You can take legal action against him. You can report to people that will prevail on him, that will call him to order. You can also do that. Also, I think the last thing here is, so what can the woman do in such instance? Okay, I think that's still part of the previous question as to slander, what the woman can do when she's going through that. Let me finally say this. The worst part about slander is the fact that you don't even know it's happening until it has gone really far. Most times you don't even know that it's happening because most people will not come and have a conversation with you and say, oh, this is what your husband said, or this is what he did not say. And don't try to go and start countering it by saying, oh, if he said this, that means he said this. You trying to counter simply means, oh, okay, since he has exposed me, let me expose him too. That is what people would understand. So like I said, don't go explaining yourself. Explaining yourself most times just makes the matter worse. I'll conclude with a story. There's a young woman who discovered recently that her husband was having an affair with a family member. And, instead of the husband to admit to what he has done, because it's not just the affair now, the fact that he's having with the family member, I think it also made that just really, really worse. Instead of him to admit to that, find a way to reconcile issues. He said, I say, no, but she has had an abortion before now. She had an abortion recently. Why is she shouting? Try to turn it or twist it so that she now begins to explain to people that, oh, yes, I had an abortion. Oh, no, I didn't have an abortion. But that is not the situation. That is not the case. The case is, did you have sex with a family member or not? Are you having a relationship with a family member or not? Are you an unfaithful husband or not? When people are manipulative, you have to be one step ahead of them all the time. And that's why I said, don't do this alone. Many times it's good that you talk to somebody so that you're working with somebody. The person is giving you ideas too, guiding you on what to do. I hope this answers all our questions. And of course, if we have any more questions, I'm available to answer them too.
Okay, somebody just said that what can the woman do in the instance of the children being favored more than her?
Okay. Yes, I think I answered. I think I already answered that, right? What can the woman do when the children are being favored above her? Let's understand that it is domestic violence. 2, you have to be very careful so that in the process of taking any action, you do not lose your children, because that is the goal. The goal is actually for you to lose your children. Not necessarily because he loves the children more than he loves you, or he's more he has more affection for the children. So the goal is to ensure that the children turn against you. So you that should also now become your goal, to ensure that those children do not turn against you. Sometimes I advise people, if you think that you can do marriage counseling, that is also something, because sometimes the person probably is not doing it deliberately. If you think marriage counseling would work, if you think having a conversation with him would work, if you think involving maybe family members or people, that can prevail over him to have a conversation, if you think that would work, that's fine. But above all, please forget about, at that point, forget about who is favoring who. As a woman, stand on your own and care for yourself. And make him see that I don't need your money or your whatever to be a human being, or to live, or to care for myself, or to buy things for myself. When he sees that you don't even care, whatever it is that is wrong with him probably fizzle out. But you see, when we cower and then begin to say, oh, hey, he's not even caring for me. He's not even thinking about me. He did not buy anything for me. You know, he knows that, yes, this thing is actually hurting this woman, so let me do it more. Sometimes it is the pain points that the abuser goes for. The pain point, the point that is most painful, is the point that the abuser keeps poking, just to make sure that the other person is hurt. So forget about that and face yourself and just focus on yourself. Your goal at that point is to make sure he doesn't turn the children against you. So that should be your new goal, not whether he's favoring the children over you.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I hope that clears that out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, our guest speaker. You have done really well. I also just want to make this comment about we ourselves. Like Isi was saying the other time, even we as women, or soon to be mothers or mothers, there are a lot of things that we had to do in raising our boys. When your boy from the beginning, even from breastfeeding, you are breastfeeding your boy child and he just bites your nipple and you just say, you're laughing. Make him see that it is wrong. Or your young boy is hitting his sisters or trying to make sure that he has his way all the time. By the time you do all that and you just allow it to slide, you are raising a child that will violate his wife or other women in future, or even other people, and bully a lot of people. So even we as women, we should be careful the kind of men we are raising, because of course, all these men that we are talking about, a woman raised them. And of course, at the end of the day, you are saying he's my son. He slapped somebody. You say, or you beat your son. He beat you back. You say, you're beating mommy, instead of you to make sure that you address that thing. So even we as women, a man that violates or is involved in domestic violence didn't start in a day. He was raised by a woman. So it still comes back to us as women to make sure that we raise boys that will not eventually become women abusers. Thank you, our guest speaker. I will call on our National Social Secretary, Miss Auntie Diola. Auntie Diola, are you there? Auntie Diola Deyemo, are you there? Is Senior Diola Deyemo on this call?
Good evening.
Okay, so I'll just call on Senior Diola to give a vote of thanks to our guest speaker. And then, is Alanja Rotinwa on the call?
Good evening, everyone.
Okay, all right, you are there. Okay, you say the closing prayer. I want to call on Auntie Senior Diola, before you finish. Auntie Akapa wants to say something. Auntie, you can unmute yourself, ma, and make your comments.
Yeah, okay. Good evening, everybody. I need to say a big thank you to the STCOGA for organizing this, and I hope it's not the first and last. I hope lots of this kind of things will continue to go on. So I need to thank the lady that had come to talk to us for the past 2 hours or something. You know, she's covered a lot of things in a lot of areas, and we're really very grateful to her. Just one thing I need to add is about, talking to ladies who are yet to be married. Some of them are on this platform. some women have children who are in that age group, and cousins, nieces and all that. One thing I like to say is that when you are in a relationship, and when they are in a relationship with a man, and you are noticing some things, they have some habits that you're not very happy with, and you do not think you're going to be able to permanently be happy with that. Like maybe they're a big alcoholic, they don't go to church, they go to church, they're not really like, Bible says yoked up with people of different. We know what there are Muslims on this platform, so I'm not going to be too religious. And they go out a lot. They hang out with different types of groups, and a lot of habits that you don't think you're going to be permanently happy with. You need to address that before you go into a relationship with somebody like that. You do not say, oh yeah, well, maybe when he gets married, he's going to change, he's going to start going to church, or maybe he's going to stop drinking, or he's going to stop going out too much, and he's going to stop shouting at me, his anger would reduce. A lot of things like that. They are signals that you need to address. People don't change, and you assume, oh, this guy's going to change when he settled down, when youthful exuberance. Let's take we take it that when he settles down, he's a family man, he has children, and there he will change. Oh boy, don't do that. It's a wrong assumption that you getting married to him settling down with you will make him to change. People don't change. It's a mistake we all make. People, when you see you're in a relationship with people, do not assume that when the ring goes on their finger, they change. Actually, they get worse. So I think we can expatiate on that mentally. That is all I just wanted to add to this. Thank you very much for everybody.
Thank you, Auntie. That was beautiful. Thank you, Ma.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ma. And thank you for staying on this call. We appreciate your presence. At least
thank you.
It makes us see that, yes, we are doing something good and we have an elder in our midst.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ma. Yeah.
Have a wonderful evening and next week ahead. Yeah, bye-bye. Yeah, bye.
Thank you, Ma. So, Senior Jola, can you please give the votes of thanks, and then Elijah Rotinwa will say the closing prayer. Senior Jola, are you on this call? Auntie Akapa, please, can you please say the closing a bit? Hello? Senior Jola.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, thank you. On behalf of the BOT chairman, our national president, Barrister Temitayo Ladipo, all the national ESCO, state ESCO chapters, we want to say a big thank you to, I think it's Dr. Mrs. Barrister Ruaola. We appreciate Ruaoluwa. We appreciate your time that you spent with us. A lot of us have gained a lot of experience. We can relate to 99.9% of what you have presented to us. We have taken down notes. We have jotted down a lot of things. And I'm sure a few of us are going to take a bold step to change our life. We want to appreciate you. We want to ask that the good Lord that has endowed you with this wisdom and this knowledge will continue to be with you. We continue to empower you. We'll continue to give you the wherewithal to help the girl child and every one of us that have gone through one abuse or the other. I am a survivor as well. But unfortunately, I could not be part of the discussion today. But we all have a story to tell. And we're standing today because we have a network of people that's able to help us. So thank you so much for what you have said today. Thank you for the time. 2 hours and people are here. We all stood here. We're all here for the hours. Over 30 of us, we are glued. So thank you so much. So once again, on behalf of STCOGA Worldwide, STCOGA in Canada, STCOGA in America, because I can see Auntie Cynthia, she's in America. Our auntie, big auntie that just spoken from Canada. So you see that you have a wild spectrum of participants. It's because we all have one family members, or we ourselves have gone through it and we want to learn more. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Auntie Diola. God bless you. Mrs. Wura Oluwa, I was even saying it myself that to have somebody stay glued to us for 2 hours, you have done really well. And I pray, as she has prayed, that the Lord will continue to strengthen your hands to do more, to do everything in your resume. I kept saying only one person doing all of these things. God bless you. Thank you very much. We really appreciate you. Okay, thank you everyone for staying through. I'll call on Elijah Rotinwa to say the closing prayer and we can go have our dinner.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim.
Amen.
We thank Allah for the life of our sister, Dr. Wura Oluwa, for taking us through this. We shall not die. Every woman have the right to peace, to enjoy their life. I pray now that every woman in marriage or aspiring to get married, we get peaceful partner. We will not go through stress and violence in our lives and marriages.
Amen.
We pray for peace in our country and in our homes. We pray that Allah will guide and guard each and every one of us through whatever we are passing through. We shall come out victoriously. Inshallah, bi kudratillah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Haraman Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta alaihim. Ghayril maghdubi alaihim waladdallin. Amin. Amin. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wa salamun alal mursalin. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Amen.
Thank you, Elijah. Thank you, everyone, for coming on this call from all over the world, from the UK, from Nigeria, from Ireland. I see Yinka is here from the US, and Bose from Nigeria and all over. We thank everyone for coming, and we hope to do this again. This is the maiden edition and is a huge success. We hope, Dr. Wura Oluwa, if we call you again, we are sure that you will oblige us. Thank you very much. God bless you, and bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
God bless.
Thank you.
Have a great
Bye.
Bye now.
Thank you.